Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, we will discuss some more Para Jumble questions that are generally asked in CAT and other management entrance examinations. So before we begin, I'm requesting you to do what I always ask you to do. That is, you first attempt the exercise through the link that is provided in the video description. Then come and watch the video. That will maximize your learning and help you to clarify many things or many techniques that we are generally using in getting to the answers in the quickest possible manner. So this is why, in order to make your learning more effective, it is always better to first attempt the exercise on your own and then watch the video so that your learning becomes complete. So let's go straight away, go to the questions. All right. The first question, slightly tough one. So since as we are progressing in a graded manner towards from easy to complex questions, the questions are likely to become tough in future as well. So that the constant exposure to these kind of tough questions will definitely improve your skill in identifying the answers, even if you get tough questions. So that is the idea behind giving tough questions in the exercises in a progressive and graded manner. So this question is basically talking about what it is talking about, the bestsellers, or what makes the bestsellers click, or what is the appeal, how you can analyze the appeal of bestsellers. All these things are given. So first to understand the context of the paragraph, then try to make some logical connection between the sentences. This is the technique you should be following. So the first sentence, bestsellers, even Orwell's displayed is to offer the charm of antiquarian quaintness. What is antiquarian quaintness? An old-fashioned appeal or an old-fashioned charm. That is antiquarian quaintness. So, like other ephemera means like other things that have a very short lifespan. So, like other things that have a very short lifespan, any other things associated with the past, which have a very short lifespan, bestsellers also have a short lifespan, and they have an old-fashioned charm. Even Orwell's despised deeping. So we are quoting about one book, and you can see that this statement is also quoting about the same book. It says that where else would one encounter a line such as "I say you are a sport painter." Means I say you are a sport means you are a good friend or a person who is having a sporting sense of character. That is a sport. Pater means father. So son is addressing Soren on having been a tenner tip. Tenner tip means a 10-pound note or a $10 note has been given by this particular Sorrel to his son. So when on receiving the 10-pound or a $10 note, the son is giving a compliment to the father, saying that I say you are a sport Pater. Pater means father. So this kind of line you will get to see these kind of lines only in books like the deeping. So that is what the sentence is talking about. So A and E are talking about a book which is an example of the bestsellers and the peculiarity of bestsellers. So you can say that A and E can be a pair, because if you are not able to construct the sequence immediately by reading the sentences, try to form sentence pairs. This we have already discussed. So A can be a pair where A talks about what is so peculiar about this particular book, and why this book is having such charm or old-fashioned charm, and what is the charm that is available in that book, which is also given is in E. So AE can be a sentence pair. Now, any study of bestsellers confronts the same question as that does the decaf no fat little drinker in Starbucks buy bother. So a very close reading of this sentence will tell you what is the meaning of this. So it says that any bestseller, if you study closely, you will have the same doubt as you have the doubt when you try to drink a particular decaffeinated, no-fat lad drinker in Starbucks. Starbucks is a coffee shop chain. You know that, or you should know that. If you are preparing for management entrance examinations, you should know about some globally renowned corporate. Starbucks is a coffee shop chain based on in USA. So this coffee shop is having decaffeinated, means there is no too much coffee in their drinks, and there is no fat latte. So latte, whatever the latte means, that form or that particular ingredient that is mixed in that drink, it is having no fat, means basically no appeal is there. So it is decaffeinated, no fat is there. These still people are drinking. So the same question, why do you bother? So why do the, so any bestsellers, when we study the bestsellers, the same question is confronted or posed to you. Why do we bother to read these bestsellers? So this is the meaning. Now, once you understand that meaning, then you can see that the very next sentence would be this. One justification and the easiest demonstrated is there. That is bestsellers interesting peculiarity. So you can say that B is a sentence that has to be followed by T. Why? B talks about the why do we read bestsellers? So just like why do we go to Starbucks and drink a decaffeinated, no-fat latte coffee? What is the point? Just like that, what is the point in studying or reading bestsellers? So this is the question that is posed in this option or statement B, and the answer is given here. One justification, and the easiest justification is there. So here, why it is given that is bestsellers? Because when that also is a hint for you to understand that D is a statement that should be preceded by B, because in B you have two nouns, right? One is the bestseller, another is the decaf no fat latte drinker. So when normally when you talk about a pronoun, it always refers to the noun that is mentioned immediately before it. So it should be talking about the decaf no fat latte drinker, because that is the noun that is stated immediately before it, not the bestseller. So that is why, in order to specify that we are talking about bestsellers, this particular expression is given in the brackets. That is bestsellers, means one justification for reading bestsellers is the interesting peculiarity. So that will give you a hint that B and D are a sentence pair. B is the first sentence and D is the next sentence. So so obviously we can say that this is the opening sentence. Means when we talk about bestsellers, what is the point in reading? Why do we bother to read bestsellers? The answer is, one justification for reading bestsellers is their peculiarity. So what peculiarity? That peculiarity, one example is given, like other ephemera pastimes, even Orwell's DP offers the charm of antiquarian kindness, an old-fashioned charm or an old-fashioned appeal is there in bestsellers. Even the despised, means that this book is not very much liked by the people, it is despised or hated by the people. Even such books have a old world charm. That is why we bother to read these books, where else you will get expressions like you are a sport pater, etc. So these are given. Now finally we talk about the another aspect. So what is that aspect? So short is the life when today's bestsellers became yesterday's fiction, almost as soon as one has read them. So this is the last sentence, because we talk about ephemeral. So ephemeral means something that lasts for a very short time. So we know that the books are very peculiar. They have an old world charm, as a result of which we read them, and they are ephemeral, or they last for a very short time. That is again emphasized in the last sentence. So short is their lifespan. So short is the lifespan of these books that they become yesterday's fiction almost as soon as one has read them. So this becomes the last sentence. So the sequence becomes BDAEC. In B, we talk about why do we bother to read bestsellers. The answer, one extra justification is there. Peculiarity. What peculiarity? Even Orwell's despised deeping have an old world charm, and you get some kind of lines like this, which normally we do not get in any other books. That is why this is peculiar. And another aspect is that their ephemeral quality, which is already stated in when we talk about Orwell's sleeping. Means they are as soon as one has read them, that is going out of our memory. So BDAEC becomes a very good logical sequence for this particular expression or as a para jumble. So you can rearrange the sentences like this, and then see whether any logical problems are there. Any study of bestsellers confronts the question, why bother? One justification is that they are peculiar. So, like other ephemera pastime, bestsellers offer the charm of antiquarian famous. So, again, we talk about bestsellers here. So, bestsellers are offering this particular old world charm. Where else could one encounter these kind of lines? And another thing is their ephemeral quality, so short that today's bestsellers become yesterday's fiction almost as soon as one has read them. So BDAEC becomes a good sequence, which is your answers. Option two this will be the sequence. Now go to the next sentence or next question. So this question is basically talking about art inflation and how art museums are not able to acquire notable works of art because of the budget constraints. So previously the budget was enough for art museums to purchase good works of art, but nowadays the because of the art inflation or the booming art market where the cost has or the products have become very costly, so art museums are not able to purchase good works of art. This particular aspect is talked about in this passage. Once you understand that, then making the connection between the sentences become not so difficult. So here we are talking about in order to highlight this problem that is faced by the art museums, we are talking about the Metropolitan Museum of Art's plight. Plight means problem. Is an annual booklet that used to be titled Notable Acquisition. So previously, Metropolitan Museum of Art used to publish an annual booklet which contained the notable acquisitions or notable purchases they made during that particular period, maybe year or something like that. And in 1986, it was renamed. So the word, it will give you a hint what was renamed. So it was renamed means this particular annual booklet, which was originally titled Notable Acquisitions, has now been renamed Recent Acquisitions. Why? Because the museum is not having enough budget to purchase notable works of art. So they have retitled this as recent acquisitions. The quality and quantity of acquisitions has become limited because they are not able to match the standards with their budget. So we can say that DA becomes a sentence pair. Now, from the point the art market boom is an unmitigated disaster. So from the point of view of American museums, the art market boom is an unmitigated disaster. Means when we talk from the perspective of American museums, the boom that is happening in the art market is a big disaster for them. So this could either be a good opening sentence or a closing sentence, because we are talking about how art museums are affected by the inflation in the art market. So we don't know whether it can be a good opening sentence or a closing sentence. So it can be either. So keep it in your mind. Then these institutions voice a litany of complaints. So what is the how do we connect the pronoun these institutions voice a litany of complaints? A wrenching sense of disenfranchisement means a powerful sense of being made being weakened. That is a wrenching sense of disenfranchisement and weakness because of the inadequate annual budget. So previously, this annual budget of $2 million to $5 million was adequate, but now it has been turned into chicken feed by art inflation. Means what? This budget has become very silly or very, very less due to the inflation in the art field. Chicken feed means something that is not having any value. That is chicken feed. So here we are talking about the problems faced by these institutions. These institutions means art institutions or art museums, or what we can say the American museums. So from this, we can see that C and E becomes another sentence pair, where C talks about the disaster that is happening for the museums because of the boom that is happening in the art market. And then E is explaining what is the disaster, because these institutions voice a litany of complaints. These institutions are raising a series of complaints or problems. They are being made powerless or weakened by the annual budget, which was once used to be once inadequate, but not adequate right now. Now it is chicken feed. So CE becomes a very good sentence pair. Then you can say that once you talk about the problem, then you talk about the particular instance or a particular highlight or a particular example of this problem that we are talking about. So CEDA can be a sequence. Then what about B? So first we talked about the problems in CE, then we talk about an example of how the problem has affected the art museums by talking about this Metropolitan Museum of Art. Then you can talk about the consequence of that problem. So what is the effect? Because as the buying power of the museums are reducing, public experience of art is impoverished, or public is not able to enjoy the notable works of art which the museums are not able to purchase. So public experience of art is made poor, and the brain drain of gifted young people from curatorship into art dealing accelerates. Means young people are now not interested in working as curators in art museums because of this lack of quality in the art museum. So they are moving from curatorship into art dealing. So this brain drain is accelerating, means a lot of people, young people are moving from curatorship in art museums into art dealing directly because of the problem. So this is the last sentence. It talks about the consequence of the problem that we are discussing. So first, the problem is discussed in the sentence pair CE. Then DA talks about an example of the problem by talking about the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Then you talk about a consequence or an after effect of that particular problem. CEDAB becomes a very logical sequence that can clearly tell you the meaning of the passage. So this is how it is laid out or properly sequenced. From the point of view of American museums, the art boom is an unmitigated disaster. These institutions, means the American museums, are voicing a litany of complaints because of the budget problem, and the symbol of the Metropolitan Museum of Art's plight is an annual booklet. So this indication of the Metropolitan Museum of Art's problem is the booklet that used to be titled Notable Acquisitions, but now in 1986 it was renamed Recent Acquisitions because of the limited quantity and quality of the acquisitions due to the budget problem. And because since the museums are not able to buy good works of art, public experience of art is impoverished. Not only that, young people are moving away from curatorship into art dealing. So this is the consequence. So this becomes a very good logical sequence that can clearly make the passage meaningful. So this should be your answer. All right, go to question number 3. So here we are talking about communal violence that happened in the cities of Hyderabad and Bareilly, and it talks about how the sequence, the communal violence is happening nowadays in India, how it has become an ordinary thing or something that is normal with Indian politics, and people don't take too much attention to it unless the number of fatalities or the number of people who die in the communal violence is very large, or the amount of violence that is inflicted on the people is very gruesome. In such cases, only people try to bother about communal violences. Otherwise, they are becoming a part and parcel of the life in Indian politics. And the two violences that are communal riots that happened in Hyderabad and Bareilly, it was not too much focused on by the media, or it did not receive too much national attention. Why? Because there was a very limited number of deaths. But the scale, planning, and causes, the way in which the communal violence is spreading nowadays in the cities need to be understood properly in order to control them. These are the things that are stated in the passage. So this is fairly easy once you understand the important things. So the recent communal violence in Hyderabad then has remained on the sidelines of national attention. So this can be a good opening sentence. So keep it in your mind. In both cities, the present round of violence was preceded by mobilizations and speeches. So whether this can be a second sentence, keep it as an option. Fortunately, there was no death in the violence in Bareilly, while in Hyderabad only 3 people were killed. Yet the scale, planning, and causes behind the riots indicate a certain change in the morphology. What is morphology? The process of change is called morphology. So how the riots are, or the nature and the character of the communal riots in India are changing. This is this is something that needs to be studied. That is the meaning of this sentence. And communal violence has become so endemic to the polity that it has ceased to attract much attention outside its immediate area of impact, or unless it crosses very high levels of fatality and barbarity. So this can be also a good opening sentence or a closing sentence. But if you read this sentence and then the option A, then you can understand why the communal violence in Hyderabad and Bareilly has remained on the sidelines of national attention. Means why it did not receive too much national publicity. Why? Because the answer is given here. The people have started accepting communal violence as a fixed character of the Indian politics. So people don't care too much about communal violence unless it crosses very high levels of fatality and barbarity. That is why the recent communal violence has remained on the sidelines. So you can say that EA can be a sentence where talks about how communal violence has become endemic or typical to the politics of India, and it is not attracting any attention unless the number of deaths or the violence is very huge. And the recent violence in Hyderabad has remained on the sidelines. Why it remained on the sidelines? That is where C comes in. Fortunately, there was no death in the violence, and in Hyderabad, only 3 people were killed. So this becomes a good sequence. So first, we talk about how communal rights has become typical to Indian politics, and nobody is giving any attention to it unless it is there is too much violence. And the recent communal violence is again not receiving any national attention because there was no death and there were only 3 people were killed. So fortunately, there was no death. So this is a sequence. But so here you can say the scale, planning, and causes indicate a certain change in the morphology of a typical right, which needs to be identified and understood if you want to keep religious sectarianism and violence in check. So you need to understand the changes that are happening in the way communal rights are happening in India in order to keep these violence in check. So fortunately and yet. So these are the words that will help you to understand that they are forming a sentence pair. So you can say that fortunately there were very little deaths, but the scale, planning, etc. are changing. The method by which communal rights are happening are changing, and you need to understand them in order to keep them in check. And this becomes the last sentence because how the morphology is changing is demonstrated here. So the present round of violence was preceded by mobilizations and speeches, primarily by Hindu fundamentalist groups. So this becomes a proper sequence because the purpose of the passage is not to talk about the specific violence in Hyderabad and Bareilly, but to highlight the fact that the nature of the violence or the process by which communal violence is conducted in India or it is happening in India is changing. Now the morphology is changing in a different way, so that you need to understand that in order to keep these kind of religious rights under check. And this is again further demonstrated by this example by saying that present round of violence was preceded by mobilizations and speeches primarily by Hindu fundamentalist groups. So this was not a typical communal right which happens on an impulse. It was a planned thing where it was preceded by mobilizations and speeches. So it was something that was meticulously planned by the Hindu fundamentalist group. And this is why you need to understand these kind of things if you want to keep such violence in check. So this is how you need to sequence the passage. The passage looks very simple, but if you do not give to focused attention, you will always go wrong. So the first we talk about the how violence has become typical in Indian politics. Then we talk about the recent violence in Hyderabad, and fortunately there was no death, but the scale and planning indicate that there is a certain change happening in the violence, and that change is demonstrated in the violence that happened in Hyderabad and Bareilly. So that is why EACDB is the best answer to this particular question. So the answer should be, or the sequence should be like this. It has been, so just like any other communal violence, does not attract too much attention. The violence in Hyderabad and Bareilly also did not attract too much attention. Fortunately, there was no death. So this again is logical, as we have say that the attention is will be received only if there is too much fatality. So that is why there was no national attention. But the scale and planning and causes behind the indicate a certain change. So this change has happened in the case of Hyderabad and Bareilly also. This is why EACDB is the proper sequence. All right, question number 4. So this is a very simple, or I would say this is the easiest of this particular para jumble exercise. So by reading this, you can understand that there is only one opening sentence. Why? That too was historic. It cannot be an opening sentence. It would have been unimaginable again because of the word it will not be an opening sentence. The fact that the country has become civilized enough to accept this outcome. Again, because of this, it will not be a good opening sentence. The two candidates in the Democratic Party were a woman and an African American. So that also is not giving you a logic to be an opening sentence. So the best opening sentence is option B, because the word that remediated hold of every other tongue after the presidential election was historic. So after the presidential election, everybody said that this was a historic election. So what should be the next sentence? Why this is considered historic? Because when you talk about a particular, or when you give a particular adjective to a particular incident, then you have to justify it by saying why everybody was saying that this presidential election was historic. So that is stated here. What is that? The two candidates in the Democratic Party were a woman and an African American. So the fact that this is a historic election is because one candidate was a woman and another was an African American. So normally, that a woman being a president of USA, or a black person being a president of USA is not something that happens every day. That is why this was considered historic. So BE could be the sentence, or the pair that opens this thing. And then what can happen? That too is historic. So these candidates in the becoming a woman and an African American, that too was historic. So BEA. Why it was historic? It is given in his C. It would have been unimaginable 40 years ago. So this kind of presidential candidate being woman and a black person, it would have been unimaginable 40 years ago. That is why this too was historic. So the election was historic because of this, and this again was historic because it would have been unimaginable 40 years ago. Why the 40-year period? So from this we can understand that this piece might have been written in the year 2000. Why? The country has become civilized enough to accept this outcome. Means the outcome where a woman or an African American is becoming the president of USA, the country has become civilized enough to accept this outcome is a considerable tribute to the activism of the 1960s and its aftermath. So from the 1960s onwards, there was a lot of activism for civil rights and freedom and equality, equal rights for women, equal rights for African Americans, etc. So because of all this activism that started from the 1960s and its consequences, the society or the country has become civilized enough to accept this. So previously, the country could not accept either a woman or a black person as a president of USA, but now the country has become civilized enough because of the activism of the 1960s. So BEACD becomes a very good sequence. So first we talk about the historical aspect of the election, then the reason why it is considered historic, then another reason for it being historic, that too was historic because it would have been unimaginable 40 years ago. Then why how the process has happened, the fact that the country has become civilized enough to accept this outcome. A, C, D will be the clear logical sequence for this particular question. The word that immediately wrote of every other tongue after the presentation was historic, and rightly so. So why it is rightly so? Because of this. And this again was historic because it would have been unimaginable 40 years ago. And the fact that the country has become civilized enough to accept this is a tribute to the activism. So this particular acceptance of such persons as American leaders is a tribute to the activism that happened in the 1960s. So this is how the sequence or the paragraph can be sequenced properly. Now the last question. What is despotism? A dictatorship, one person ruling with all force that is available to him as a dictator is called despotism. So despotism is the difference between dictatorship and despotism is in dictatorship it is generally a person who is from the military or a person having a military background who will rule the country with complete force with the help of the military. But in the case of despot or a despotism, it will not be a military, we need not be a military person. It can either be a person from the military or it can be other person. And with the help of all the law enforcement agencies, he will be ruling with a very heavy iron hand, suppressing the people and ruling without any particular law or any particular a rule or a set of rules. He will be ruling arbitrarily. So like we have our Kim Jong-un in North Korea, he is considered a despot. So this is how what despotism is. And the once you understand what is despotism, the sequence becomes very simple. So you can say is a good sentence. Obeying no law, authority of a despot was arbitrary and its animating spirit was fear. Yes, this is a good opening sentence because he is not constrained by any law. He rules the country according to his whims and fancies, or whatever he feels fit, he will be doing. So that is why the authority of a despot is arbitrary, means random. He is not following any particular scheme or procedure or ethic or rule. So that is why it is authority is arbitrary and its animating spirit is fear. So the basic or the dominant feeling among the people when they are under a despot is fear, because they all fear about their lives or property. So this fear is used by the despot to rule the people. So this is a good sentence. So that then what you can say, Montesquieu has defined its spirit as the rule of one according to no law. So again, Montesquieu has defined its spirit. What spirit? Then the spirit that we talk about here, the authority of a despot. That is the spirit of the despot. That defined the spirit of despotism as the rule of one according to no law. So you can say that ED can be a good sentence pair where E talks about how the authority of a despot is arbitrary and its animating spirit is fear, and Montesquieu has defined its spirit means the despot spirit or the despotism spirit as a rule of one according to no law. Then what happens? Then what happens? Then over a period of time, what will happen? A regular usage of this particular term diluted the original rigor of the expression's meaning. Expression means this particular expression, the rule of one according to no law. So these expressions meaning was diluted over a period of time through regular usage. So we first talk about the how a despot is getting an authority, then how Montesquieu has defined that spirit of the despot, and how this expression has lost its original vigor or the energy or the intensity of the meaning through regular usage. So EDC. And because of this loss of meaning, what will happen? By 1962, Rousseau stated that there was no meaningful difference between the authority of a despot and that of a monarch. So, since the meaning has got diluted through regular usage, in 1762, Rousseau redefined the meaning of a despot in his social conduct by saying that there is no difference between the authority of a despot and that of a monarch. Monarch means a king who rules according to a set of principles or rules or certain customs or procedures. That is a monarch. So there is a lot of difference between the authority of a despot and that of a monarch, but through regular usage, the expression lost its meaning. This particular expression of the rule of one according to no law. And by 1762, Rousseau was saying that there is no meaningful difference between the authority of a despot and that of a monarch. So EDCB becomes a very good sequence. Now, where to fit in A? The revolution began as an attack on despotism. So this sentence do not match after we talk about this. So you can say that this could be a good opening sentence. So A can be an opening sentence. So first we introduce the concept of despotism by talking about a revolution which began against despotism. So that is how you introduce a particular topic. So the revolution has got our passage has got nothing to do with the revolution. So this is only a statement that is used to introduce the topic or concept of despotism. So that is why A can be the good opening sentence. Then you talk about then what is the meaning of despotism. It is there is no law. The despot has arbitrary authority and its dominant spiritual sphere. And Montesquieu defining it as rule of one according to no law. And but what happens over a period of time, the expression, the intensity or the meaning of the expression got diluted through regular usage. So much so that by 1762, Rousseau stated that the authority of a despot and the authority of a monarch, there is not much of a difference. So A, E, D, C, B becomes a very good logical sequence that will make the sentence completely logical. The revolution began as an attack on despotism. Again, the introduction sentence where this concept is introduced and how despot is deriving his authority. It was arbitrary and animating spirit was fear, because of which Montesquieu has defined its spirit as the rule of one according to no law. The one person ruling, you following no law. But after a period of time, the regular usage, the tone diluted, the original expressions meaning. Expression means this expression's meaning. That is why in 1762, Rousseau stated that there was no meaningful difference between the authority of a despot and that of a monarch. So AEDCB becomes a very good logical sequence. I hope the exercises have helped you, or the explanation has helped you to understand the logical connection between the sentences. In the first reading, even if you do not get any logical connection between the sentences, you need to keep on reading to establish the connection, form sentence pairs, try to form the connection between the sentence pairs to form sequences, and then try to review the sequence in your mind to and look for any kind of logical inconsistencies. If there is no logical inconsistency, that would be a best answer. So this is the process you have to follow in Para Jumble questions. The questions may be tough. It may not be the meaning or the connection between the sentences may not be coming to you instantly. Nowadays, in all the management exams, especially CAT, the Para Jumble questions are not easy. Previously, it used to be somewhat easy, but nowadays it has become very difficult. So that is why I'm selecting questions that are difficult, so that you get a feel of the type of questions that you are going to get in your exam. So once you practice with these kind of questions, your skill becomes developed and you are able to tackle the questions in the actual exam without a problem. So I hope you have found the video to be useful. If you have found it to be useful in your preparations, kindly like, share, and subscribe so that I get motivated to come out with further videos. Thank you. Bye-bye.